Hi, folks. Just a few words here nearing the end of week 5 about the post-war era and the Cold War that we've been covering this week. Um, I find it very interesting talking to people who lived during those years and who grew up in post-war America, how different and disparate their impressions of the period are today. For example, my mother-in-law came for Thanksgiving, and she grew up was a young person in the 1950s, and vividly remembers that time period. And she's very sentimental about the music and about her memories of growing up with her friends. And it's a very kind of a positive impression that you get talking to her. By contrast, I worked with a woman for years who's now retired, and she's from the same generation. And she grew up here in southeast Kansas and attended her high school, I think it was like a 30th or 40th anniversary with her class. And she said that she had had African American students, that these people were her friends when she was in high school. And some of them came to the reunion, and she was reminiscing about all the great times that she remembered from her high school years. And two of these friends stopped her and they said, Kay, she had been talking about the prom, the senior prom. And they said, Kay, do you remember us at prom? And my colleague stopped and thought, and she said, come to think of it, I don't remember seeing you at prom. And of course, they pointed out to her that they weren't allowed to attend prom because they were black. And my colleague said this was a revelation to her. She had to rethink all of her memories about growing up in her hometown. And there was this other element of life back in post-war America that she had ignored, that had been invisible to her. It didn't directly affect her. And she didn't remember things that way. And she said this was a profound experience for her. Another example is what happened to my maternal uncle. He grew up in a Greek neighborhood, spoke the Greek language as his first language, and my grandfather, who was an immigrant and a business owner, saved and economized so that my uncle could go to medical school. And he was the first person in his family to get a college education. And he went to an Ivy League school, went to the University of Pennsylvania, and endured kind of a terrible experience, I think. He was regularly asked by both professors and other students, what is someone like you doing here studying medicine? And he said that he always had to work 110% harder than everyone else to gain their respect. And his roommates in his dorm told him that he would be doing all of the cooking because Greek people, that's what they're good at. And he came out of that experience, I think in the 50s. Remember, diversity is not really valued so much. That uncle, I think, had such a traumatic experience. His given name was Fotis Drakopoulos, and it became Frank Dracos. He Americanized or anglicized his name. And all my cousins on that side of my family grew up not speaking a word of Greek. And so post-war America, I think, really traumatized my uncle, made him ashamed of who he was and of his culture. And that affected not just him, but his children and grandchildren. So like any period in American history, I think you need to recognize that we all live in our own personal historical space. And my experience is different than yours, different than a third person. So that's sort of what makes it interesting, I think. Have a great weekend. I hope you've enjoyed the topics of the week, and I'll talk to you later.